To be honest with you, I actually had a really hard time picking a story, second chance story for tonight, because I was reunited with my favorite duck when I was 8 years old. I met the love of my life when I was 38 years old. It's a lot of second chances in life, but since I do a lot of work with people about their work, I thought I'd tell a story about work, specifically about being fired. Feels a little lonely up here. So has anybody else here been fired? Yes. Thank you, good. Well, like most being fired stories, this one takes place in my 20s. I had my first corporate job, and I'd risen up through the ranks. I had been on customer service rep on the phones, and I had risen up to managing marketing programs for this company. It's a really cool job. It involved a lot of analysis, which I sucked at. It required a lot of strategic thinking, which I sucked at. And it required a lot of negotiation skills, which I sucked at. The only thing that was a saving grace was my boss. Don was the VP of marketing, and he really looked out for me. He was a mentor. Even though he knew I was in way over my head, he looked out for me. But after a time, he couldn't manage me anymore. He was too busy, so he hired this marketing wizard sage to be my boss. This woman's resume read like a who's who of the industry. I was very impressed. He paid her a lot of money. He relocated her from California to Boulder, Colorado. It only just now occurs to me she could be here tonight. I may rethink this. And as I said, I was very impressed with her, But within the first week and a half, I had this realization, and the realization was that I hated this woman. And I'm not a hateful person, but she was mean. She yelled at me. She berated me. She insulted me. And it was a small industry, so I would talk to people in other businesses in the same industry and say, well, I've got this new boss. I'm sure you've heard of her. She was the VP of marketing at such and such, or the director of marketing at this and that. And all these conversations had one thing in common, which was that no one had ever heard of her. So after a few of these conversations, I started to realize something, and that was she was a fraud. She was. And so I was young and vengeful. And so I decided I was going to tell my mentor, Don, all about it. So one day, one Friday afternoon, she was out of the office, and I walked into his office and let him know. First of all, I told him how mean she was. And then I told him she was a liar as well, and told him that she'd fabricated her resume and this and that, and he listened and nodded, thanked me for my time. But he never got as upset as I thought or hoped he would get. So I left his office really unsatisfied. But the following Monday, I came into work, and I was told I was wanted in Don's office. So I thought, well, he had to think it over the weekend, right? He's going to fire her now. He just needed some facts. You know where this is going, really? So I walk into Don's office, and Don's sitting there behind his desk, and she's there too. And before I can even sit down, she says, your work is not up to our standards. Which was totally true. She said, you're insubordinate. Which was also true. And she said, I know that you've been sneaking out during the day to interview for other jobs. It's also true. She said, you've got 2 weeks to tie up any loose ends and be on your way. So I was stunned. I turned my attention from her to my mentor, and I said, am I being fired? I was. So I went home that night angry and embarrassed, honestly. So I had been a straight A student in high school. I went to a prestigious Northeastern liberal arts college. I was the kind of guy who got promoted, not the kind of guy who got fired. Then as I thought about it, I realized, companies, this company and most companies, have policies for dealing with this kind of thing, right? If you're not performing up to standards, they give you clear feedback on what you're doing, give you a chance to do better, and then fire you. I hadn't had that chance, so in a moment of righteous indignation, some of you might call foolish, I wrote a letter of rebuttal to my firing. And I marched into work the next day very proudly, and I put a copy on Dawn's desk, and a copy on her desk, and a copy with human resources. So not long after that, I was called into Dawn's office again. He was there. She was there, yes. And she said, "We got your letter. You've got 30 days to improve this, and this, and this, or else you're fired." I said, "I'm not fired?" So I had a second chance, right? So I thought. The thing was, I made her look like a jerk. Right? I made her look like a jerk in front of Dawn. I made her look like a jerk in front of human resources. And in front of me, I'm sure she knew all of the things that I had told him. So she became mean in whole new ways. She yelled at me more. She belittled me more. She insulted me more. And she even made me cry. Thanks. Sweet. So, a week and a half into my reprieve, I am surreptitiously packing my belongings in a box, sneaking it out to my car, slipping a letter of resignation onto her desk, and slipping out the door without a word. See, I thought that having my firing retracted was my second chance, but my actual second chance came 2 weeks later, when I took a temp job that turned into a 10-year career with a company that taught me almost everything I know today, including that you never make your boss look like a jerk, no matter how much you suck.